Ooh, I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of that. Hey everybody, my name's Bimler, and today I'm going to be reviewing Radiohead's 1997 album, OK Computer. You might have heard of it. This album is generally hailed to be one of, if not the greatest records of all time. Not only being a vast improvement from Radiohead's previous album, The Bends, which I reviewed by the way, but also paving the way for countless sounds in alternative rock, glorious production, and still incredibly relevant lyrics. The album's messaging being very universally applicable, being about isolation, being about depression, but also being mainly about humanity's reliance on technology, and society stuff like that. It's considered to be one of the best albums ever. On Rate Your Music, it was number one until recently being usurped by Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, but it still sits very comfortably at number 2. It's considered Radiohead's landmark album, their best. Do I think it is? No, but I think it's amazing. Why is OK Computer amazing? Even though I don't think it's the best thing they've made, I can definitely see why, in the context of Radiohead's discography, this album is so appreciated. If The Bends is where Radiohead became Radiohead, then OK Computer is where they perfected Radiohead, and they would then proceed to build off of this sound, whether it would be delving further into electronics on Kid A, revisiting it and tweaking it in Hail to the Thief, or making it much more art poppy and vibrant in Rainbows. Everything post OK Computer can be drawn back to OK Computer in some way. And this album definitely sets itself as the sort of gold standard for what would not only become Radiohead, but also alternative rock music as a whole. This album paved the way for so much, for better and for worse. Just in general, the album does a fantastic job of combining much more modern electronic experimental sounds with gorgeous, lush, alternative rock instrumentation. An example of this is the opener, Airbag, starting off with very groovy guitar riffs, and then incorporating these really punchy drum beats and this nice bass line that carries the song throughout its whole runtime. In this song, Thom Yorke talks about him getting into a car accident and surviving, which in and of itself, very interestingly, sort of ties into the album theme, because it's the reliance on the technology of the car that got him into the accident, but also the airbag that saved him. It gives this interesting duality of, well, I mean, technology does make our lives better, but does it also make our lives worse in the process? Like, sure, airbags are great. They're safety tools for people, but cars can be dangerous as hell. What if he didn't have the airbag? What if it didn't work? He could have died in that car accident. And then what? Well, we wouldn't have OK Computer, so that would suck. And we certainly wouldn't have the next song, Paranoid Android. This is generally considered to be the best, or one of the best songs on the record, and I have to say I agree. It's kind of like if Radiohead made Bohemian Rhapsody at this stage in their career. Starting with those memorable beeping sounds, followed by that sweet and silky guitar, Thom Yorke's vocals coming in over the song, delivering some very characteristically distant and disassociative lines. Could you stop the noise? I'm trying to get some rest. Before progressively getting angrier and angrier as this leg of the song continues. This frustration continues to build until the song eventually explodes into that awesome breakdown. That guitar solo just sweeping across the mix as it brings it into a much more, very almost religious experience of a bridge. These nice falling melodies with Thom Yorke singing rain down, rain down. As stated by the band, this song has to do sort of with a bar fight that Thom Yorke actually experienced and I guess took part in. The first leg of the song very much describes his growing frustration as his inebriated self is observing things happening around him, eventually building up into a climax where he supposedly engages in a fight with somebody, and then goes smoothly into this bridge that is supposed to sort of be him being taken out of that scenario, whether it be like a police scenario, or just generally being dragged out by the staff of the bar or wherever he's at. In the context of the album, though, the song definitely sort of shows a sort of attempt at autonomy, right? Tom, or the character of the song, is trying to exercise his free will and make a difference in his environment, you know, by acting out, by fighting, by doing something. And he's dragged out of it by whatever authority is in the area, which generally ties into this album's theme of authority and control. Then we have track 3, Subterranean, Homesick, Alien, which is a personal favorite of mine. I think it sounds amazing. That guitar at the start of the song is just mwah every time I hear it. This song paints another pretty vivid story about Thom Yorke driving along a road and wishing that aliens would come down from the sky and take him into space, show him the world, the meaning of life, and all that stuff. And how his desires and how he views the world leaves him feeling very isolated. talking about how people in his life are just uptight, and they'd probably think he's crazy if he told them a lot of the things he thinks, or if he discovered the meaning of life and came through, they'd shut him away. They wouldn't want him around. And it's a really compelling message. Just generally a nice song on the record. But I'd be remiss if I said it had anything on the next track, exit music for a film. Not only has this song been used in countless TV shows, and I think movies, it also happens to be the most cinematic of any song on this record. The song is one of the most dejected and depressed sounding, at least from the start of the song, fantasizing about escape, getting away, running away from a father, or metaphorically speaking, any authority figure in life, and just running away, being free, living your own desired life. But that's all the song is, really. It's a fantasy, even at the incredibly satisfying climax where Tom is found screaming, "We hope that you choke," which is just incredibly thrilling. I mean, this song still gives me chills, and I must have heard it hundreds of times by now. The song very much doesn't actually mean anything that is really happening. It's just sort of a desire to escape. Because eventually, if you really do try, you're going to be let down. That's a segue into the next track, Let Down. This is a fantastic song. You're going to hear me say that a lot on this record, but it's true. Let Down's a very blissful, cheery, but also dejected and downtrodden song, just about basically the title, being let down in life. Life just kind of blows, doesn't it? Is just not fun. Very much talking about how a lot of people can be held back in society and how people just don't get to live these ideal lives that they want to live. It's just a generally sad song, but I think it's a great one. Especially towards the end of the song where the background vocals really swell up and hold that high note. And the whole lyrical bit of the "one day I'm going to grow wings," hysterical and useless bit. It's just classic peak Tom York lyricism. It's great. The last track on the sort of first half of this album is the iconic song Karma Police. I go back and forth on this one. Not necessarily whether I like it or not, but whether I think it's a highlight on the album or not. If you're asking me right now, I personally think it is. This is peak Tom York dejection. This whole song is talking about sort of authority, as you could probably guess by the song's title. But almost in this one in more sort of a career sense than maybe a societal one. Talking about employers, for example. But this song very much to me almost feels like an illustration of how power can corrupt, especially with the bridge of the song, the whole "for a minute there I lost myself" bit. This song ends with the sweet guitar riff sort of being drowned in this bit crushed sound as it transitions into the next song, Fitter Happier, which is the sort of separator for the two halves of the album for me. This song is in the iconic Mac text-to-speech voice, just spitting out little phrases that very much relate to modern life, technology. You noticing a theme here? But a lot of disturbing imagery in general. The backing ambiance of the song doesn't help either. These very strange sampled noises, this distorted whirring that seems to coat the whole song, as the lyrics say very disturbing things, with all the specific and inhuman phrasing. The odd amount of mentions of a baby strapped in the backseat of a car, kissing with saliva, a cat tied to a stick, and of course the iconic ending line, "a pig in a cage on antibiotics," which here is being used as a metaphor for the very technologically reliant humanity. Just a bunch of pigs in cages on antibiotics. The next song, to kick off the second half of the record, is one of the most divisive songs on the album, Electioneering. Personally, I like this one. It's the political banger on the record. It's definitely unfitting coming after Fitter Happier, and I kind of wish the next song, Climbing Up the Walls, was in its place, and maybe just flip the two songs around. Nonetheless, as it is, Electioneering is, in my opinion, the most fun song on the record. That chorus is an earworm, and Tom York's vocal performance is amazing on it. Also, the whole guitar and bouncy feeling of the record is just infectious to me. But then the next song, as I mentioned before, Climbing Up the Walls, this is a favorite on the record for me. This song is definitely a very interesting one in its commentary. It's kind of talking about the general societal view and treatment of mentally ill people, especially those with much more dangerous, I guess you would phrase it, mental disorders, which I guess kind of undermines the meaning of the song. But what I mean to say by this is that the song kind of tells the story of somebody being left in isolation and succumbing to their mental problems and doing something assumedly really bad because of it. The whole song just has this very eerie, ominous sound to it until the very end where the song just explodes, and in my opinion, the most satisfying climax on the whole record. The screaming siren-esque synths with the crunching guitar, the pounding drums, and the single best scream by Thom Yorke you will ever hear. Like, that song is still genuinely scary even after the 50th time I've listened to it. It is amazing and incredibly powerful. And kind of jarringly, it goes into the next song, No Surprises, another big hit off of this record. This song is another one that's very dejected with its almost lullaby-esque sound, and Thom Yorke painting this very bleak and sad and sterile picture of, I guess, what he imagines the world is going to be like. The iconic opening lines, a heart full up like a landfill, a job that slowly kills you, bruises that won't heal. This song, shockingly, is just very sad. But I think it does it very well, because it seems to find a comfort in it in a way. Until the very end of the song, where you can hear backing vocals yelling, "Get me out of here," which is a really nice touch on the song, kind of brings you back down to earth as like, hey, this sterile lifestyle is not something to be desired. Such a pretty house, such a pretty garden is not something you should want. And the song does a great job of reminding you of that. The next song, Lucky, is another divisive one for me. I'm not personally a huge fan of it. Relative to the rest of the album, I still think Lucky is actually a really good song. I just prefer everything else on the album to Lucky. However, that chorus is definitely an earworm for me, and it definitely ties this album much more to something like The Bends, in a good way. And finally, the closer, The Tourist, is just this very sweet, slow finish for the record. It doesn't feel very climactic or final, which might leave a little people with something to be desired, but I don't think it's supposed to either. This album isn't the kind of album that warrants a climax towards the end of its runtime, because it wouldn't fit the album's messaging. It's a very dejected, sad album about submission and weakness. It is not meant to be strong like this. The strength came with Paranoid Android, or the fantasizing and exit music, or the mindless insanity of climbing up the walls. It's not going to come here. And it also kind of loops back the album lyrically to the first song, Airbag, with the chorus of The Tourist being, "Hey man, slow down, idiot, slow down, you're gonna get into a car accident," which, I don't think I need to explain how that ties into the first song, but I do think it's very creatively done. As although I don't think it totally loops the record, I think it gives the album a very thematic sort of callback to that, where it does feel like a cycle. Thom Yorke's dejection and general hopelessness is leading him to be aimless and make mistakes like this. That works for me, and I think it works really well. In general, I think OK Computer deserves pretty much all of the accolades it gets. Somebody said about Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon that it is the best album of all time, but not even the best Pink Floyd album. And while I don't agree with that, I would almost say that about OK Computer. It is arguably the best record of all time, but I don't think it's even the second best Radiohead album. We will get to that soon. In terms of OK Computer, like I said, I think it is absolutely phenomenal. I would give this album an S. And if you haven't listened to it, either listen to it now or listen to the Bends and then listen to it so you can fully appreciate the evolution from the Bends. So I think it's actually a huge aspect of the album as well. But I digress. If you have heard it, what do you think about it? Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, comment what you think about the album if you've heard it, and subscribe if you want to see more. Hit the notification bell to be notified when that more comes out. And yeah, that's all from me. See you guys in the next one. Adios.